Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of BizPod.Ninja. Again, we show 25-minute showcase business ninjas from around the world every Thursday and Friday. Either Thursday or Friday every week. 25 minutes, episode number 5. What's going on, Emil? How are you? Been a long time. Where are you COVIDing it out these days? Looks That's true. Although I have seen a lot of folks in Florida flock to the beaches a little bit more than they should have in the past couple of months. And then I think now they've reinstated the lockdown. Is that right? What's going on in Florida? Yeah. Hmm. And how have you been primarily hunkered down at your house, or have you had the ability to do anything else?
The leisure activity you could do is go on the water, jet ski. You could, go on a friend's boat if you can.
Here, sorry, Emil. I realized we had a 1-minute delay. Folks could hear me; they couldn't hear you. So we're gonna just say I'm gonna reintroduce quickly.
Sure.
They heard what I said. Emil, he's in Miami right now. Can you just tell us how the quarantine is going?
Yeah. I'm in Miami Beach, and we're on quarantine number 2 right now, or maybe 1.5. They just reinstituted the curfew and closed restaurants down. So really unfortunate, because we didn't get hit hard last time, but now we're getting hit really hard here in Miami. So we're just hunkered down at home.
Yeah. It is it is unfortunate how everything is kind of oscillating between ups and downs, but I think we're going to get through this.
We're definitely going to get through it. Let's just let's focus on don't Twitter doom scroll, or you'll get depressed.
I know. So everyone, a quick introduction on Emil Michael. Emil is the former chief business officer of Uber. He raised the most amount of funding in history for a private company, $15 billion. Emil is a true business ninja, having also built 3 successful companies: Tellme, which sold to Microsoft. I remember that one. I actually was at Microsoft at that time when that acquisition occurred. Klout, which sold to Lithium Technology, and obviously Uber. At Uber, he built $10 billion in market value as a key executive for Uber China and Russia. Emil also struck partnerships with some of the world's largest companies, including American Express, AT&T, Softbank. Prior to Uber, Emil started his career at Goldman Sachs as an investment banker before heading to Silicon Valley to become part of the founding team of Tellme Networks. He then was selected as a White House fellow, working for the Secretary of Defense as a special assistant. During his tenure at the Pentagon, Emil ran projects in the Middle East. Today, he's also a leadership coach and mentor to dozens of young CEOs over the years, and serves as an advisor and investor to over 20 startups around the world, furthering his commitment to helping build the next generation of entrepreneurs, scalable companies, and the futures there. Portfolios of Emil include, from an investment perspective, because he's also a pretty active investor, as we mentioned, Bird, Code Academy, Docker, Go Euro, Go Puff, SpaceX, and Stripe. Emil has an AB from Harvard undergrad and a JD from Stanford Law School. So maybe the mix between the undergrad and the law degree makes you a cunning deal maker. We'll dig into that. So, so it sounds like you're holding up all right. I think, I know a bunch of folks know that you are an incredible business person, but what folks don't also know is that you're a recent dad. I think your baby daughter could be your greatest achievement yet, Emil. Is that right?
That's what it feels like. I'm 47.
First-time dad, right?
Yeah, she's 5 months old, and I was like, I waited quite a long time, and now I'm thinking, man, I should have done this sooner.
That's what everyone I've heard that narrative from so many people.
Yeah,
and you certainly look super happy. So she's 5 months old. Probably a great time to, a challenging probably time to be a first-time dad or have a child that young. But at the same time, it may be a rewarding time because you literally can just spend as much time together because there's nowhere to go. Everyone's quarantining.
Yeah, I was thinking that the last time I haven't been on a plane for work for 5 months, I was probably in high school. So how insane is that? So I get a lot of quality time. So I think it'll be super memorable for me to have had that much time with her in the early part of her life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, time for a meat and potatoes portion of the BizPod.Ninja show here. I've got a few questions that, and again, for anyone who's live right now, I can field some live questions as well. So I'm going to ask a few of my questions, and for folks who may want to also ask any questions, I will be fielding them live. So I'll be looking out for that as well. All right. So obviously Uber is a darling growth story during your tenure. One of the greatest growth stories in Silicon Valley. However, there was also obviously a lot of controversy around those times. What can you share on that and give color on anything that people don't know?
I mean, one of the lessons I learned is that if you're building something important, no matter what it is, it's going to have some controversy on it, right? You look at Facebook today, Amazon, Google, the heat on the big companies, and Uber sort of had that heat early because we were running against the regulators who were protecting the taxi industry. So everything we did was provoking the bear, so to speak. So we were in the news a lot. We were always, something that a company that someone wanted to talk about, because on the other side of it, people loved the service. It was changing people's lives. I mean, I remember being in San Francisco without Uber. I remember trying to get around the city.
It was awful. I remember those.
It was awful. So the things that made it controversial were also the things that made it successful, the sheer ambition of it. So what people don't know is that what made Uber possible was the iPhone, right? Before the iPhone, there was no way to have a driver have a phone in the car. And therefore, when he or she was driving around, you couldn't track them. So the first version of the iPhone made it possible. And then the other crazy thing about it is the battery used to die in the iPhone, even when you had it charged in a car, because the battery was so small. And that, I think, was the iPhone 3, when you finally could charge a battery and keep it charged in a car. And that's when Uber really took off. Got it. Literally a battery life plus.
And the GPS component, right? I think the second iPhone, or was it the second or the third, where they enabled GPS? Because the first one didn't have it.
It wasn't the first. It was more like an iPod on steroids, the first one.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was this sort of the very first mobile app that brought real world value to the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so part of the growth pains of hyperscaling and, your time during your time there as well, a lot of political and policy and regulatory fights across, I think, not only in the US, but globally. Disclaimer, I was also the first round seed angel investor in 99 Taxis in Brazil, which was the Uber of Brazil, which was the number one competitor to you guys, which got acquired by your competitors, Didi, a couple years ago for the first unicorn exit out there. So I know the space pretty well. And I know you guys pretty well at Uber, of course. So during that time, I remember it was also even in Brazil, a fight between 99, a fight between Uber, a fight between politicians, local cab companies, and from that, it was I think Uber remains to be one of the greatest growth stories, but definitely collateral damage there. But a lot of learnings. What did you learn from your experience at Uber, and how has that made you a better leader going forward?
Well, I mean, God, there was so much to learn. I think one of the macro lessons I learned is, and this goes for hyperscale companies that are trying to hyperscale. So your revenues, your customers, are going like this. The curve is straight up and to the right. The thing that's easy to do is ignore the company building, because I distinguish between business building and company building. Business is going like gangbusters, right? The company has to track alongside of that. Means legal, finance, HR, manager training, all the stuff that make a company sort of bulletproof. You have to try to track those together if you're going to hyperscale. If you don't, you're going to get into some trouble. We have a lot of young kids, although we're all doing their own thing without a lot of guidance. So that's one of the big leadership lessons I learned for a hyperscale company.
So how do you manage to parallel track growth? As you just mentioned, all the HR process, people management, all these things, back office. What is the one piece of advice, if you could go back to make that growth a better experience for everyone at the company and yourself? And what would be the one piece of advice to manage growth across all these functions that you would give? Because it is a real tough thing to do.
It's really tough. It all comes down to the percentage of time you're devoting to it. If you devote 99% of your time to growth and 1% to company building, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
If you're more like 70-30, then not only are you going to kind of grow almost as fast, it's going to be, you're going to sustain that growth for longer, because the company is going to be solid and be able to handle it. So I think that trade-off, figuring out how much time the mind share the executive team spends on the company building is the sort of thing you have to really think about.
Got it. What did you learn? Third question: what are you most proud of at your tenure with Uber? And what is, I think if everyone's listening, given that you're the fundraising ninja, probably the preeminent best person out there, raising $15 billion, the most amount of funding for a private company in history. What are you most proud of? What is the secret sauce for founders out there or individuals in a similar role to what you were at Uber to raising $15 billion? So two-part question.
So the thing I'm most proud of is probably Uber's experience in China. I mean, I remember every single CEO I talked to was like, do not bother trying to do a business in China. Don't try it. It's not worth your time. You're going to get killed by local competitors. The government's not going to be on your side. And we went into China and we fought like hell against a local competitor to the point where we ended up merging our China business with theirs. And now Uber owned at the time 20% of Didi.
Right.
Which, from a value creation standpoint, that's $10 billion of value. And no American tech company had done that as ferociously and fast as us. And I got to be the executive sort of most in charge of China. And it was incredible. I spent maybe 100 days there, going out to various cities, and it was an incredible experience. On the fundraising side, the number one piece of advice I have to entrepreneurs out there is to don't get attached to an investor, get attached to a process. And what that means is decide what your process for fundraising is going to be and try to be unemotional about the different firms and investors that come in and assess them objectively. Don't fall in love. If you fall in love, you may end up taking a lower value deal than you should take, or you may evaluate, how much you like that person, not about what their firm could bring to the table. And so you want to be, clear-eyed about choosing that. So we always said when we were at Uber, things like, we're going to spend 4 weeks on fundraising. We're going to do 15 meetings, and whatever valuation it spits out, we're going to take. We're going to test the market. And we didn't get attached to a valuation. And too much.
It was market led. So you guys, that's interesting. I always thought through each subsequent funding round that Uber had these like monster like step ups in valuation, that you guys had kind of some at least like pre-money valuation or something in mind. You made it such that it was very much market driven and market led.
Very, very much market driven, market led. And then whenever the number comes out, you're not happy or sad about it because you didn't set your expectations like that. And it's very hard to be disciplined to do that, Andreas. But if you could not disattach yourself from an outcome, the valuation, and just essentially say, I'm going to make sure it's a fair process that's going to be market driven, then whatever comes out of it, that's what you're worth. That's
the first time I've heard it put into perspective like that. and I can totally see the value in that, because everything is expectation management. So if you go into something that, hey, it's a free market mentality, and whatever kind of where you end up, it's neither good nor bad. It is what it is, and you don't have this false expectation of either being, disappointed or even being elated. It's just that's very much kind of your ethos and perspective towards fundraising, and I think that's a really valuable one that I haven't heard that perspective before. So thank you.
The other thing, Andreas, is when you don't have an expectation, more investors participate in the process, because the other alternative is to say, hey, I want $200 million. An investor looks at it and goes, hey, I'm out. That's not worth it. Even before they look at numbers, if you don't have an expectation, they're more likely to participate because they're
going to be more involved.
Yes.
Got it.
That means you have more bidders. You have more people at the table looking at your company. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great piece of business ninja wisdom. Thank you, Emil. What are you most excited about these days?
What am I most excited about? I am, the delivery of stuff is in its heyday, whether it's, the Uber Eats, GoPuff, DoorDash, Instacart, all over the world. Those businesses are blowing up.
Postmates, actually, I just realized right now, this eureka moment, Postmates Uber, pretty appropriate.
I'm not super happy about the price they paid, but it was expensive.
It was an expensive deal. But delivery services in general are what gets you most excited. I think you're also an investor in Rappi as well, right?
Yeah, and Rappi too. I'm excited that it's going to fast forward the future on delivery services. The other things that are hard not to be excited about is all what's happening in enterprise and the work at home software companies, which is truly changing. It's going to be a game changer in the way we work as an industry and as a country, and frankly, the world. And it's going to give a lot of people flexibility. It's going to decrease the importance of Silicon Valley and increase the availability of tech jobs everywhere else in the country and the world. So I think it's a real democratizing force in a lot of ways.
What is the most kind of interesting aspect of enterprise tech and process management? Like, are there any specific verticals or horizontals that really get you most excited about that?
I mean, it's interesting. It's the unbundling now. We're doing the unbundling. So now you have Slack and you have Zoom and you have Airtable to compete with Excel, all these things. The one thing I think is still missing in a big way, and I'm waiting for someone to invent it, is identity management across mobile and your desktop, whatever. No one has solved the password problem. No one has solved the who am I problem. And it's insane because our lives are getting way more complicated with every new service we sign up for.
That's really funny. After this, after the show, I'm going to send you an email with a company that I led the seed round of called Journey.ai. It's trusted management and identity using double-blind biometrics. So I'm happy that you're saying that is what's most interesting, because I agree with you, and that's what got me really excited. That's a great coincidence. What sectors of investment are you most interested in these days? You're an active investor. For folks who are watching the show live now or later, who should they pitch you, or what things are you most interested to invest in the next, let's say, 12, 24 months?
Well, I still think fintech is in its third inning. Right? Look at what's happening in Brazil and Latin America. They're starting to replicate the Alipay, WeChat Pay China experience.
That's right.
Even PayPal and Square and all these payment-oriented companies are making progress in the U.S. So I still think there's a lot of innovation around payments in every continent. I think virtual restaurants are a big deal now that delivery is taking off. Like, you're going to be able to build a restaurant for way cheaper.
You mean like ghost kitchens?
So ghost kitchens are the real estate. Ghost kitchens are the real estate. Then inside the real estate, someone has to cook the food and make the menu.
Okay. Yes.
All right. And that used to be a restaurateur who had to spend $500,000 to open a restaurant in San Francisco. Now you could do it for a fraction of that in a cloud kitchen and deliver it to anyone.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's interesting. I think the identity management stuff's interesting. And those are the key sectors I'm looking at right now.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We've got 5 minutes left, so we're going to go into some fun questions. But before we do that, Emil, congrats again on the baby daughter. Given that you're a father and the state of the world at this time, there's just so much going on across many different areas. What is one thing you would like to be different about our world for your daughter's future?
Well, man,
and I know that's a packed question, but we're just dealing with 2020 is probably the craziest year anyone has dealt with.
But in some ways, besides the virus, we've been building up to 2020 in terms of the acrimony that we are having within the country, between countries, and so on, and what social media has done in terms of divisiveness and allowing people to sort of like be bitter enemies who've never met each other, and that sentiment is super destructive. And what you're seeing online today is just sort of like the continuation of that. And I don't know what the answer is, but man, I hope she doesn't have to face such a polarized, world and society. So I'm looking for ways that I and others around me can help sort of contribute to a new way of looking at those kinds of discussions happening in a better way.
Okay. Thank you for that. Couple fun questions. Obviously, I don't think you've been to a movie theater, but what have you been watching on iTunes? Have you, or Netflix? What's your favorite recent movie?
Well, everyone, I don't know. I probably have a good company watching the Hamilton streaming thing that came out on Disney Plus.
Right.
That's been awesome. And then I've been watching all of the documentaries on Netflix, right? That I watched the Versace one, the Inside Bill Gates one, Brain one.
I love the Bill Gates one.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then really this sinister one is the Jeffrey Epstein one. So there's been.
I saw that one. That was very, insightful, and we had no idea how. Where the rabbit hole actually went.
Wow, it sort of gave you a sense of the magnitude of that crime. So those are the things, but like on the happy side, it's been, Hamilton, which is just a crowd pleaser times 10,
Yeah.
So I think we needed that one.
I haven't seen it, so I think I've got to put that on my list.
Yeah. You do.
When Miami reopens, where's the one place you would go to eat, restaurant experience? Where's your favorite place in Miami you would go to? First place you're going to go?
It's the, probably that Poppy Steak restaurant. Have you been there?
I haven't been there. What is Poppy Steak?
Poppy, P-A-P.
Oh, okay, Poppy Steak. No, I haven't.
It just opened last year. It's this great place in South Beach, and it's like a lot of celebrities go, and it's fun. It's right near the beach. People go there before they go out.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's super social, but it's packed. So it's exactly the wrong place to go during COVID-19. It'll be the funnest place to go back to when it all opens again.
I have one friend who has said that there's a place here in LA. It's Cats and Coffee. It's like a cat cafe where you get to play with like kittens and have coffee. So I'm like, maybe it's you eat steaks and play with puppies. That's an interesting concept. What are you reading these days? Where do you get most of your information from? What's your main source?
Yeah, I use Twitter as the best source for information that links you back to the major publications. I'm trying to stop that. I deleted Twitter off my phone, and I just use the browser on the phone to do it, to limit my sort of intake, because it's just all doomsday stuff.
Yep.
But so that's unfortunate. In terms of reading, what did I read last? I mean, God, I feel like I haven't touched a book in a while because the news has been so all-consuming in the last 60, 90 days. So I don't know if you're having that same feeling.
I have that same issue. Yeah. But any particular blogs on technology that a lot of folks like TechCrunch. Is there a go what's your?
Yeah, I mean, the best publication that doesn't make my blood boil one way or the other is like The Economist. And then in terms of blogs, Stratechery is great, and what's his name? Axios.
Mm-hmm.
That daily email that they send out is a good summary of what's going on in tech world. Pretty neutral, sort of calm stuff. So that's kind of what I like.
Awesome. Final question. How are you staying fit these days?
That assumes I am staying fit.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a Peloton? I feel like half the people I know have either gotten a Peloton or they're using some sort of fitness app.
No, we have a Peloton and we walks with the baby, but that's about it. It's a Peloton whenever I could kind of muster the energy to do it, and then walks around where I live, and that's about it. But the baby keeps us pretty active.
Oh, of course, yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Emil. Again, everyone. Emil Michael, former Chief Business Officer of Uber. This is the 5th episode of BizPod.Ninja. For those who are going to be watching it post-recording, will be available on LinkedIn Live as well as the website every Thursday or Friday, 25 to 30 minutes with various business ninjas around the world in their respective categories. Thank you, Emil. Stay safe out there.
Take care.
And congratulations again on the daughter and all the good stuff that you've been working on.
Hey, take care of yourself, Andres. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.